Hi and welcome to Drops of Science. I'm Marco, I'm PhD student in molecular biology, and today I would like to try to clarify a little bit the situation regarding the SarsCoV2 variants that we heard about in the last few weeks. Let's start by defining what we mean by variants. So these are viruses that have accumulated mutations on the spike protein. The spike protein is of concern because it's on one hand the protein that allows the virus to enter our cells and therefore infect us, and on the other hand is also the protein that we use to make vaccines in order to train our immune system to recognize the virus and then fight against it. Therefore we have three main concerns about it. The first one is the transmissibility of the virus that can be of course affected by this mutation. Consequently also the severity of the disease that might be different. And finally, also the efficacy that the vaccines might have against these variants. During this pandemic, we'd actually learned about many different variants, but there are mainly three which are of particular concern. And the first one has been identified in the UK, the second one in South Africa, and the third one in Brazil. Now, I'm not going into detail on which mutations they have and which they have in common and which not. I'm just gonna explain what we know about them, what we don't, and particularly in regard to the three concerns that I just mentioned before. So regarding the transmissibility, we know that all the three are actually more transmissible, so they actually can spread much easier, though the extent of this is not really clear. We have good data about the variant coming from the UK, which seems to be roughly 70% more transmissible, but for the other two variants, we only have some data that tells us that they have similar mutations to the UK variant, meaning that it's legit to think that maybe these are also more transmissible. But again, we have all just preliminary data and we cannot be really sure about it. Just to give you an idea, in the UK, despite being in a lockdown regime, while they were able to keep in check the infections driven by the standard variant, when this new variant came out, the new cases of infected people went to the roof, showing that the measures that were in place at the moment, despite being able to control the standard variant, they were completely useless against this new variant. Then, as mentioned, the other concern we have is the severity of the disease. Again, we have only preliminary data about it, and especially for the first variant, the one coming from the UK. This one seems to be roughly 30% more lethal, and the studies have been conducted in different places and they kind of reached a similar conclusion. So despite having many limitations, we can be quite certain about the results. For the other two variants instead, we don't have much data about them. The good thing is that we don't see very increased lethality in any country at the moment where these variants are predominant. So this is a good news, but of course we don't have striking solid data about this, so we have to wait. Regarding transmissibility and lethality, I actually have a very important remark to make. Despite being counterintuitive, the transmissibility of a virus is much more worrying and important than the lethality. And to give you an example, if a variant has 30% more lethality, like for example the one from the UK, in a certain time window we might have, instead of for example 10 people dead, we might have 13. This of course is a higher number, but the two numbers are pretty similar to each other, so it's not a huge increase. Instead, when we have a variant that has the same lethality but has 50% more probability to infect somebody, in the same time frame we have, instead of 10 people dead, we might have 70 people dead. So we're now comparing not 13 against 10, but we are comparing 70 against 10. This is a huge increase. Therefore, transmissibility is much more important to keep in mind rather than lethality. Finally, concerning vaccines, we have again preliminary data with many limitations. However, we know that patients that have been infected with the standard variants do have antibodies that can recognize also the variants coming from the UK and the one coming from South Africa. The extent of protection is of course a little bit different. We don't have solid numbers about it, but we know that these antibodies are actually able to recognize the variants. So this means that probably also people that are vaccinated will be easily able to recognize these variants and being protected. The third variant instead, the one coming from Brazil, is a bit more concerning because again from preliminary data it seems that it's able to infect again people that were already infected with the standard variant. So somehow is able to do what we call immune escape, which namely means really escaping this immune system. So to summarize a little bit what we just said, we have three main variants. The first one identified in the UK, the second one in South Africa, and the third one in Brazil. We know that all three are more transmissible. However, the extent of this is not very clear. We have good data really just on one of these variants. Then we have the same variant being also a little bit more lethal. Although, as we said, transmissibility is much more important than lethality, so this is again important to keep in mind. And finally, we have one variant which worries us a little bit regarding vaccines efficacy. But again, preliminary data, a lot of limitations, so we still don't really understand the situation and we have to wait for more data. Before ending the video, I would like to also tell you something about how we can protect us from these variants, but also from the virus itself in all these shapes and forms. We learned during this pandemic that the virus can spread through our droplets that we emit when we talk and cough, but it can also spread very well through infected aerosol, which is basically our breath. The aerosol we emit actually is able to travel much more than 2 meters. This means that now distancing and masks are not enough to protect one from each other. However, the good thing is that aerosol has to reach a specific concentration before being able to infect somebody. And this gives us the opportunity to fight back very easily just by ventilating properly the room. So the point that I want to stress is that if you are meeting with somebody in a closed environment like a house, for example, of course keep social distancing and mask. This is absolutely fundamental, but it's also extremely important to exchange air properly. Of course now it's winter, so it's not as nice to keep windows open and having this cold breeze coming inside the house, but it's much better to maybe stay with a jacket for a while rather than having the risk to be infected with the virus. Well, for today that's it. I will leave, of course, all the sources I use for this video down below. However, if you have questions regarding specific variants or specific studies, but also stuff that is not really related with COVID-19, please leave it in the comment below, or you can also find me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. You can write me and I will try to answer your questions and doubts as best as I can. And in the meantime, if you like the video, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing to the channel so you will be notified every time I upload a new video. With this, I would like to thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.